Alright, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So this video lecture will discuss about the overview of Chapter 10, that is about judicial system in Malaysia. Alright, for your information, we classify the courts in Malaysia into superior courts and subordinate courts. So we will look into the hierarchy later. But from the box here, you can see that the civil courts are courts we considered in the civil legal system in Malaysia in comparison to what we discussed before, that is the Sharia courts. So under the civil courts, as I said just now, we've divided it into two categories of courts. That is the superior or higher courts, and the other one is the subordinate and lower courts. Whereas we do have a couple of other courts with special jurisdiction, we call it. Among others, courts, there are special court, court martial, court for children, the Sharia court, which we have discussed when we talked about Islamic law, and also the native court, which we also have touched about a little bit when we discuss customary laws. All right, so this is the hierarchy of courts in Malaysia. If you can see here, the superior courts are what we call the federal court, that is the apex court in Malaysia. And we have the Court of Appeal underneath it, and the two courts of high courts, that is we call one High Court of Malaya, and the other one is High Court of Sabah and Sarawak. As for the subordinate courts, we have Sessions Court and also Magistrates Court. So Magistrate Court is considered the lowest court in Malaysia lah. All right, let's have a look at the composition and jurisdiction of the court in Malaysia. Let's start with the Magistrate Court first, all right? Okay, from the Magistrate Court, we categorize the Magistrate Court into two categories. We have the first class Magistrate Court, and the other one is the second class Magistrate Court. What is the difference between the first class and the second class? Usually it is in terms of the magistrate sitting in it. For the first class Magistrate Court, the magistrate who presided the court is usually, they must be legally qualified, meaning they have a degree in law. Okay, in comparison to the second class magistrate, usually they are civil servants or court officials, which probably have experience in legal matters or have been training in legal matters and procedures for quite some time. So they are appointed as a second class magistrate. Okay, for the first class magistrate, the jurisdiction is comprising of original and appellate. Okay, please differentiate between what do we mean by original jurisdiction and appellate jurisdiction. So original jurisdiction are jurisdiction what type of cases that they can hear the first instance. Maksudnya kes-kes yang kita boleh bawa lah ke mahkamah magistrate ni bagi permohonan kali pertama. So for original jurisdiction, we divide, there are civil jurisdiction and also criminal jurisdiction. For civil jurisdiction, they can hear cases, the value or the amount in dispute does not exceed 100,000 ringgit. Whereas if the amount does not exceed 5,000, you can bring the case yourself to the Small Claims Division Magistrate Court. You don't need a lawyer for this. Okay, there are allowance lah for Small Claims Division in the Magistrate Court. For criminal jurisdiction, a magistrate may hear criminal cases with the following nature. Usually cases where the offence is punishable by fine only. A majority of those cases are traffic offences lah. And also whatever case or criminal cases whereby in the penal code it is provided that the term of imprisonment, if sabit kesalahan telah didapati guilty and whatnot, it must not exceed 10 years. Okay. However, a magistrate usually may never or may not impose a term of imprisonment exceeding 5 years. So kalau you notice in the news, usually a magistrate will only issue term of imprisonment less than 5 years lah. Okay, for appellate jurisdiction, this one was previous lah. Sekarang dah tak ada lah in term of penghulus court. Apart from that, they may also dismiss a criminal appeal if they consider there is no sufficient ground for interfering. Okay. Dulu kita used to have a penghulus court, so currently we don't have. This one actually, I have to check back whether it is still relevant or not, but it is in the table lah for your knowledge. Alright. For the second class magistrate court, as I said just now, they are civil servants or court officials. So they may hear cases where the demand or the amount of dispute is not exceeding 10,000 ringgit. And in terms of criminal jurisdiction, they can hear offences which is punishable by a maximum penalty of 12 months or fine only. 12 months imprisonment or fine only. If, let's say, the second class magistrate felt that the case that is being brought to them, especially for criminal, kadang-kadang ada repeat offender kan. Jadi, if they feel that they deserve a higher penalty, they can adjourn the case and transfer the case to a first class magistrate. Okay, and then we go to the session court. Session court, judge sitting also only one, and then they can try cases for civil cases, amount of subject matter not exceeding 1 million ringgit. As for criminal offences, they can try all criminal offences except those punishable by death. Okay. As for the High Court, they have a much more wider jurisdiction, considering they are the first level of superior courts. So the judge usually sitting would be only one. Okay. And then the civil jurisdiction, they have unlimited jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction pun unlimited jurisdiction. But usually what will happen, they will only hear cases that cannot be heard by the magistrate court or the session court judges. And then they do have special civil jurisdiction. It does not really matter lah, if the amount is not more than lower than 1 million. Because by practice, for civil cases, usually the High Court will hear only cases which the amount of claim is over 1 million ringgit. But for these special jurisdiction cases, they will hear the case regardless if the amount is less than 1 million. Among others is cases of divorce for non-Muslim, admiralty matters, bankruptcy, winding up of company, and letters of administration of estates of deceased and whatnot. Okay. For criminal jurisdiction, they can hear cases which usually, of course, carry the death penalty. So that is their jurisdiction, the usual jurisdiction. So if you hear cases whereby 302 ke 304 semua tu, jadinya kalau dia carry a death penalty, they will brought the case to the case will be trial in the High Court. As for their appellate jurisdiction, they can hear cases from the subordinate court, barang rayuan dan sebagainya. Tapi usually the subject matter of the rayuan must be more than 10,000. Except for cases of maintenance of wife and children lah for the non-Muslim. For the criminal jurisdiction pula, they can hear cases from the subordinate court, except where the punishable the offence is punishable with less than 25 ringgit. They also have revisionary jurisdiction, supervisory jurisdiction to or supervise the lower courts. Okay, and then when it comes to the Court of Appeal, nama pun Court of Appeal, so they don't have any original jurisdiction. So their jurisdiction is only focusing on appellate jurisdiction. Usually the court will be sitting with 3 judges or any greatest uneven number lah. So the decision made will be by vote lah, by majority. So for civil cases, untuk appellate, they can hear appeal from High Court's appellate, original and appellate jurisdiction. Selalunya, it must be matter which is value dia more than 250,000. For criminal jurisdiction, they can hear appeal from the High Court's original jurisdiction and appellate jurisdiction, or any revisionary jurisdiction in any matter decided by the session court. Okay. And finally, the apex court ataupun court paling tinggi sekali di Malaysia ialah the federal court. So for the federal court, untuk setiap sitting session of the trial, there should be 3 judges or more. The full bench, selalang ni full bench maksudnya kesemua judge sitting to hear the case is 11. 11 ni I'm not sure dah pernah jadi ke belum. Usually 7, 9 tu dah ada ya. So kita ada 9 judge ke atas tu, 7 judge ke atas tu. Okay. Untuk original jurisdiction for civil and criminal matters, federal court has the same original jurisdiction as the high court. Okay, sama jugalah untuk criminal. Tetapi of course lah, kalau ada court high court dah boleh dengar, dia tak akan dengar dululah. Okay. Additional jurisdiction dia, apart from that, this is special only for federal court. Kalau you nak bawa case terus ke federal court, it has to do something with the validity of any law made by parliament or state legislative assembly, ataupun if there is any dispute in regards to issues between states and the federal government. For appellate jurisdiction, they can hear appeal cases which comes from the Court of Appeal, usually cases yang kita appeal daripada High Court original jurisdiction lah. And then untuk criminal, they can also hear cases from the Court of Appeal, which are, as I said, sama macam criminal case juga, civil case juga, whereby usually the case originates from the original jurisdiction of the High Court. Apart from that, the federal court will have a referral and advisory jurisdiction too. So they can give opinion on any question referred by the YDPE or any provision of the federal constitution. So that is some overview of the functions, the composition of the civil courts in Malaysia, the main ones lah, the superior courts and the subordinate courts in Malaysia. As I said just now, we do have other courts with special jurisdiction. Antaranya ialah special court. So special court ni is established for cases involving the royalties. Okay. So they have exclusive jurisdiction over all proceedings involving the YDPA Agung and all rulers in their personal capacity, bukan official capacity. Personal capacity maksudnya macam mana? Your personal what do you call it? Personal ability or personal rights lah, your personal things like your marriage, divorce, benda-benda macam tu lah maksudnya. So kita punya cases kalau ada pun sebelum ni ada case Farida Begum ni, dia saman the late Sultan Ahmad Shah at that time because of failure to marry, a breach of promise to marry actually. But because Farida is actually from Singapore, if I'm not mistaken, so they can't bring the case under the special court. And then for court martial, we have the Armed Forces Act 1972. So under section 103, it provides the establishment of a military court for any army officers who commit any offences under their jurisdiction. And finally, we have the Court for Children. So this court is established under the Child Act 2001. It replaced the Juvenile Court. Okay, so a child who is under 18 years old and in criminal proceeding, they should be, if they are in criminal proceeding, they should be more than 10 years old. So if you are detained, the court will deal with the cases not in open, so it's not open to public, so they are only attended by court officers. Usually, you will have the magistrate there assisted by 2 advisors. One of the advisors must be a woman. And then once offences have been proved, they need to consider probation report, opinion of the advisors and whatnot. So usually penalties will involve sending the children to Hamigani school. Kalau imprisonment pula for those age 14 above is awarded by the session court. Okay, in case of sentence to death, a child can be detained in prison under the pleasure of Agung. So dia sentences tu tak akan ada lah, sebab selalunya kita akan ganti dengan prison sentence. Okay, so that is basically some overview of the judicial system in Malaysia.